What's going on, guys? Hope everyone's having a great day. Today we had on Alex Rubio. This is his second time on the podcast, and we got into some interesting conversation about his lifestyle and how he does different types of farming, and he's raising quail. I believe it's quail, but and rabbits. So it's super interesting, and we also get into talk about technology and how it's being used in murder cases and things like that. So hope you enjoy the podcast and hope you have an amazing day. Take care. Enjoy. And we are recording. What's going on, man? How you
Yeah,
been?
doing good, man. How you been?
I've been good. It's been an interesting ride, but we're chilling. So second time on the podcast. I'm very excited to have you back on. It's
Yeah, how long
been
has it been? When was it? When was the last time?
I think like 6 or 7 months ago, something like that.
Yeah.
I know there's been a lot going on for you, and we actually both went to Riley's wedding, which was a good time.
Oh, yeah, it's awesome. It's been a
But
long time since I went to a wedding. It was good.
yeah, I know, and the venue was nice too. Yeah, it's been a while since I guess kind of since COVID. There hasn't been like too many weddings I've been to, so
Mhm.
it was a good time. But yeah, let's get into it. Let's what have you been doing in the past 6 or 7 months since you've been on the podcast last?
Well, I mean, you kind of got us started on the topic. I had surgery on my right hand. It's been about 3 months, and basically, I had joint replacement done on my thumb. And you see
Oh
the
Jesus.
incision site. Then they also had some trigger finger going on, and the incision was like right here, right on my part of my callus. And yeah, it doesn't click anymore, but I'm still trying to get it to work the way that it used to.
So did you have you had to
Mostly,
go through like a lot of physical therapy for that?
yeah, it hasn't been too intensive. It's still kind of healing, but a lot of stretching, a lot of hot, cold type stuff, and things like that. So it's been good though. Initial pain that I had the surgery done for is not there anymore. So
Well, that's good. And what was
that's
the
the
pain
important
like
part.
kind of coming out of that?
As far as what do you mean?
What was the pain like coming out of the surgery? Was it like super bad or
No, it wasn't too bad. I mean, it's just like a lot of aching, obviously a lot of healing, like on the incision sites, swelling, things like that. But the hardest part was just not having a hand. That was really, I wasn't, I was expecting it, but as soon as it's there and you don't have a choice, you can't pretend to not have a hand or imagine what it's like. To have it actually be gone was just really messed with me a little bit. It's pretty interesting.
yeah, I definitely can not to that extent, but I can definitely relate. I actually am in the middle of a shoulder injury, so
Mhm.
I'm supposed to be in a sling right now, but I'm not because I'm sitting down and stuff. But
Yeah.
yeah, so I can understand. It's definitely weird not using your dominant hand for a lot of tasks that you usually do. When it comes to writing and going to the bathroom's a whole nother story.
Oh man, like Ziploc bags, like the bane of my existence. Like I'm having a pinch strength, so I'm trying to I'm still fighting things, trying to get it done. Buttons are a nightmare.
Oh my god.
Um, yeah, it's been interesting. It's like a life changing thing.
Yeah.
Everything that you do, everything that you know is like different.
Well, it's cool because I bet you it activates like a whole different section of your brain, really, if you kind of think about it. And it goes along with that saying that's like, oh, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. I mean, at least at the end of this, you're probably going to be somewhat ambidextrous, you know?
I'll tell you this: my left arm is definitely like a lot stronger than my right. Like I can actually see, it's like I'll do stuff and I'll get like a pump in my left arm, and then I'll look at my right arm, just like it's atrophied. The fingers don't really work the way they should. It's a 9 day difference, but yeah, it'd be good to get my right side strong too. Get it strong again.
Yeah. So I'm sure, like what you were saying, is like, what's the physical therapy kind of like, and what's the road look like to recovery for that in terms of when you can start kind of like lifting heavy things with your arm again and kind of getting it back to full strength.
Yeah, I mean, it's basically whatever I can tolerate. So the hardest thing right now, like I said before, with my my main issue was with my joint pain in my thumb. Um, but this right here, this tendon has been really tight, and that's been my biggest issue is just making sure that this doesn't just like curl up into like a claw. Like I really need to make sure that I'm stretching it out and really getting that tendon to not shorten and just kind of stiffen up. So this has been a big one for me. Um, Heat, stretching, gripping things, like sand, like warm sand. They give me like a putty to work with my hands to kind of get my thumb, back to where it needs to be. So it hasn't been too intensive. It hasn't been anything like that. It's just been a lot of, I guess, just trying to keep the fine motor skills. Trying to keep the thumb kind of the way that it should work. Just kind of able to move around and do different things. And it's a pretty complicated joint.
Yeah, I guess that's not really something I've thought too deeply into. So I guess there was no reason to think too deeply into it because I've never had an injury like that to my hand or a reconstruction like that. But yeah, I guess in terms of the way you can move your thumb, it's pretty complex, even more
Mhm.
so than a foot in terms of like your toes moving. And I know when it comes to your ankle and all that, that's all very. I've had ankle injuries, so
Is this your first shoulder injury, or have
anything
you had
upper
problems
body,
before?
yeah. I've never had injuries in the upper body, so I definitely would rather a leg injury than a an arm injury. I do so much with all the different things like on computers and stuff, so it makes it kind of tough when you gotta like kind of hunch over and try to use a mouse when you're in a sling or like whatever, and it's definitely way less comfortable. Whereas like when you have a leg injury, like it sucks, but you can kind of get by a lot easier. I feel like.
I try to think during the whole process. Like, would it be worse if it was my foot, or would it be worse? Is my hand being injured like this worse? And I don't know. There's no comparison. I mean, they're both terrible. They're both going to mess up your daily life.
Oh yeah.
It's going to be a long thing you have to recover from. And I think they said about 6 months recovery for my hand. It could be a year, depending. Everybody's different. But basically, yeah, 6 months. I don't know if that's the date of my surgery or if that's after surgery, but I'm expecting by the end of summer. Should have full use of my right hand. Should be good.
Well, that's good, and it's cool that they kind of give you like a little bit of a roadmap, even though everyone's different. um, yeah, I actually have my appointment tomorrow to see what the road to recovery for this is gonna be. So,
Yeah, whether it's good or not, I don't know. I purposely remained ignorant on the surgery. I don't want to know too many details. Um, I don't know. I just didn't want to know that. Normally, that stuff doesn't gross me out. Surgery's blood. It's not a big deal. But the fact that it would be my hand that this was happening to, I didn't really want to know too much about what they were doing. I mean, even just seeing the incisions and just how big they were, and just imagining all the stuff they did inside my hand with my tendons. Like I didn't want to know too much about it. I just wanted to
oh yeah, I
know
can.
what I need to know to get better. But I think I'll look it up eventually one day. I
Yeah.
still need to do this one. I'm still thinking about doing this one too, so maybe it'll be after that.
Oh wow.
So we'll find out.
So that's like a whole year's worth of if it follows track, that's a whole year's worth of recovery from both of those. But in the long
Yeah.
run, I mean, obviously it'll be better, but that's a lot of time. It's funny that you mentioned that because I actually kind of feel the same way. It's like that's the only thing that grosses me out about like blood and like stuff like gory stuff is like I can just picture it happening to me, and
Mhm.
then I'm like, oh, that would suck. And yeah, like I saw some stuff the other day that gave me the heebie-jeebies because like when you see an athlete get like a broken leg and their bones sticking out and stuff, it's like it doesn't really bother me, but then I think I'm like, oh, what would that feel like? I'm just like, oh my god, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I've never been injured that bad to where I needed surgery. This is my first surgery, my first real surgery, and I'm not thinking so much about what caused it to happen, like the mechanism of injury that like broke this or that. I'm thinking about like that's gonna suck to recover from. That's months of just you know
Yeah.
recovering, figure things out again, learning new ways of doing things. It's a lot. I didn't really understand that until it actually happened to me.
Hmm. I mean, that's a pretty good track record. Being, what are you now? You're
I'm 42,
42.
42. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a damn good track record for not having surgery or anything like that.
Yeah. Um, I saved all my reckless stuff for work. I didn't really, take up rock climbing or anything.
Hmm.
Yeah, luckily I never got hurt at work, doing
Yeah,
Coast Guard stuff, on boats. It's easy to do.
I can imagine. I mean, there's a lot of danger on vessels like that too, uh, let alone like
Mm.
falling overboard or something. But I feel like that is falling overboard like a common thing that happens. I feel like it's not, but
Yeah, it happened to me twice.
wait,
Yeah,
really?
yeah, it was really dumb. It was it was when I was first in the Coast Guard, got through boot camp. It was like what was it? It was like probably 2000, 2001. I was on my first cutter. It was a 378-foot high endurance patrol boat. Well, not patrol boat, but high endurance cutter. And we're getting ready to go out to Asia. We're doing like they called it a carrot patrol, which combined combined something, whatever it stood for. I can't remember all the acronyms anymore, but basically we would sail with the Navy as part of a flotilla, is what they called it. So we had some Navy boats. We had us, representing the Coast Guard. We'd go to Asia, stop at some of these ports and some of these nations, and we'd have our boarding team members, our boarding team officers, kind of show them how we do law enforcement in the Coast Guard as far as fisheries and drug interdiction. Show us our tactics, things like that, and just kind of like a joint goodwill kind of cooperation type thing. And so we're on our way out there. We're leaving the San Francisco Bay, and we decided to launch a small boat, just kind of have like a little pilot boat out there, and we could get some training hours for the small boat crew. So I was one of the crewmen, and what they do is they lift the boat out of its cradle, out of the side of the ship, and it gets lowered down by a hoist onto the main deck. That's the way that we did it at the time. So the boat got lifted up, lowered down to the main deck, and it got pinned up against the ship by the lift, holding it securely for the most part. It doesn't move around too much. And then you can load on your gear, you can load on the coxswain, you can load on a crew member, um, just to be able to get the boat disconnected from the ship once
Hmm.
it's in the water. So a couple of guys get on board. They tell them they're good, get lowered down to the water. Once they hit the water, that's when the boat starts moving. It's going up and down on the swells. The ship is still making way forward. It's still, making speed, and it was going pretty quick at the time. I remember it was pretty quick because after the incident that I'm going to tell you, whenever we did that, we went much slower after that. So the cutter's going at a good cruising speed. Don't know what it is, and the boat gets lowered. So once the boat is lowered on the water, it's moving up and down. It's a little bit rough. The entrance and the exit to San Francisco Bay gets pretty rough. Um, and so from that point, they would call down to the rest of the crewmen because there were still people that needed to get into the boat. And you crawl down what we call a Jacob's ladder, which is basically just a rope ladder.
Hmm.
The actual rungs are like good solid, plastic, and then the rest of it is just rope that's all holding it together. So the first guy, I think he was a fireman, so he was the engineer. So he goes down, he's making his way down the ladder, and then he gets to the point to where he needs to transition from the ladder to the boat. He's at the water line, but the boat's doing this up and down, right? So you have to time it just right with the swells, which is already kind of, if it's nice and calm out there, it's not a hard thing to do. But if you have the ship making way, the small boats moving independently, and then you have good swells coming at you, there's probably like maybe three foot drop, 3 foot difference, so you're on the ladder at this point, you think you're going to jump on the boat, and then all of a sudden, boom, the boat could
Oh,
fall from
yeah.
underneath you, which is basically what happened to me. Um, that the engineer, he jumped on the boat. He was like, all right, I'm just going to jump on the boat. This is my best chance. And everyone's like, don't jump from the boat to another boat. That's like very dangerous, obviously, right?
Yeah, you
Sprinting to the
guys.
side, you know, just keep good control of what you're on. And then as soon as you get a good step, just do it, but do it quickly. Don't just like free fall onto something, that's how you get hurt. So he did that, and everyone's like, don't do that. Nobody else do that. So it was my turn after that. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to be nice and careful. I'm going to wait here. And I'm watching the boat underneath me. It's kind of going up and down, up and down. I get my foot on it a couple of times, and as soon as I do, it drops down. And I was like, I don't know how I'm going to do this. Like, I need to jump onto this thing, but I'm not allowed to. I can't, whatever. So I just kind of stepped onto the boat and tried to go quick and try to make a quick transaction. But the boat dropped out from under me before I was ready. I ended up falling in between the gap between the ship and the boat.
Oh
And I
my.
remember I'm in the water and I'm looking up. I'm looking up at the deck where everybody was, and they're just like watching me float by. I'm just like, here I am. I'm in the water. It's interesting. I'm kicking up against the hull of the ship. I'm kicking up against this thing, just trying to stay away from the screws. The propellers in the back. Which there wasn't any danger of me getting sucked in, but I didn't know anything. I was 20 years old. It was brand new. I'm kicking against the side of the hull and just trying to swim away from the boat as much as I can. And then I remember just kind of floating out there. Just being like, wow, this is interesting. I see the boat. I see the boat. They start doing their man overboard signals on the big, huge horn that you hear in the movies. All honk, honk, doing the whole distress thing, man overboard. That's me. I'm just floating there. And the small boat, eventually they disconnect. They come around, they pick me up, and just like, oh man, how was it? How'd it go? I was like, dude, I don't know. It was a thing. And get on board, and they checked me out. Did you hit your head? Yeah, I might have. I mean, I was wearing a helmet. We all were and stuff like
Mhm.
that. But it was just super embarrassing.
Yeah, I mean, I can understand where that would be a whole
It was a while.
embarrassing.
And
Yeah.
here's the thing too, though, because it was that wasn't my first patrol. My first patrol was up to Alaska, and that was kind of in the back of my mind. I was like, thank God we're not in Alaska, because if you fall overboard, you're frozen in 10 to 15 minutes, depending, whatever. And that's about how long it takes the ship to turn around.
Oh wow.
So it was good that I was in nice, I mean, not warm water, but San Francisco water as opposed to
I didn't even
Dutch Harbor
consider.
water.
Yeah. Yeah, if you're and if they don't have like a small boat, how do they get you when like it's not you don't have a small boat out though?
Yeah, so that's the thing. So if it takes, 10, 15 minutes, for the boat to turn around, you're going to be close to freezing. And how long does it take to like launch a boat? You think about what time of day is it? Are there a bunch of people sleeping? It's the middle of the night and somebody falls overboard. How long does it take to get everybody up, get everybody to operate that crane, get a crewman, get a crew ready, all with all their gear and everything ready to pick this person up? It's like, you know,
Yeah, it's got to take a while.
yeah. So
So
it's
they
good,
kind of have
it's good to stay on
to.
the boat. What was that?
So they kind of have to launch a small boat to get you. There's no like.
Well, yeah. I mean, there's another drill that we would do for man overboards where it was, I don't know how realistic it is, but basically the entire ship kind of like making its way towards like a person in the water, right? Like the
Mhm.
entire ship doing this. But even at that point, you need a lot of people on deck. Basically, you have a bunch of people just kind of lined on the deck. You see the person. Everyone's got some kind of a heaving line or life ring, just trying to get it to that person. And that's a drill that they practice. But then again, it takes 10, 15 minutes to even get to the person, even on the ship. The small
Yeah.
boat could take just as long.
It's kind of like being in space then if you're in the Arctic.
That's what we're talking about before. And in a cold water scenario, that's what happens. You just get lost in the cold. You're done.
Would you hear about that guy? They call him the Iceman.
For what? Like
So
Top Gun?
no, not Top Gun. So no, there's this guy. I want to say he's from one of the. I want to say like Sweden, but I could be wrong. It's one of the countries up the Nordic, something like that. That whole area, but pretty much it's like he went through this whole traumatic event with like his wife committed suicide, and so he was really lost and stuff. But what kind of saved him was he fell through the ice on a pond, and he didn't freak out or anything. But he noticed that the cold water just gave him like this solace and like way to kind of handle and slow everything down and like kind of handle the depression he was going through. So he started doing cold water deprivation where he would go and sit in ice water for like long periods of time and not get hypothermia. Um, and like he climbed, ran up Mount Everest in just shorts.
Are you serious?
Yeah, dude. And like,
Nuts.
so he created his whole endurance and stuff, and he can like control his breathing and survive in these ultra cold areas with nothing. Um, and it's like this. He's inspirational, and if you look him up, it's super interesting. But it kind of like, I wonder if they'd ever do training like that for people going out into the Arctic in the future, maybe.
Oh yeah, I mean, even just I mean, you're born and raised here. You're a New Englander. I mean, you're adapted to the cold. You've been in cold
Hmm.
weather your whole life. I mean, it's definitely a thing. The opposite side too, like you have like Northern European cultures where they're super big on sauna. And
Hmm.
there's some saunas where you can fry an egg, but that just I mean they're used to it. That's just what they do. But I have heard there are a lot of good health benefits. Extreme cold, some heat, and just kind of going back and forth. Something about cellular regeneration, or
Yep.
I mean, I don't know much about it.
I actually do in my routine for the gym and stuff. What I do, I live in an apartment, so I can't have a cold water plunge. But so I'll do my hour and a half workout, and then I do sauna for at 185 degrees for 20 minutes afterwards. And when I come home, I'll take my shower like a regular shower, but at the end I'll do 3 minutes of the coldest setting, so right before you can turn the shower completely off, and I'll sit
Mm.
in that for 3 minutes, just because I don't have a cold water tank or anything that I can do an ice plunge in. And I'll tell you one thing, it definitely releases a lot more dopamine. Studies show that it's like something like 2.5 times your dopamine goes into your body a day and like makes you overall happier. Um, it also suppresses different anxiety producing chemicals in your brain. Same thing with sauna, putting your body through extreme stress along with after working out. Um, it allows your body to kind of release I forget the chemicals that are in your brain that cause it. Cortisol, I think, is one of them, and a few others. But also, along with those health benefits of just the daily life, I think it's like your chance of heart attack by doing both those things for like a certain amount of time each week. Um, it's like 50% less chance to have heart disease and have a heart attack. I think it's like 60% less chance of getting cancer. I'm just coming up with these numbers, but they're somewhat around what the studies were talking about. Um, Something with your metabolic health is better, and your brown. When you're talking about the cellular stuff, it produces brown fat, which apparently is like way more healthy for you than the other types of fat.
Huh.
Um, and it helps your protein synthesis.
What about the cold? Like, how cold does it have to be?
Uh,
Like, I could walk outside right now and be in like 20-degree weather. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, it has to do something with I think it's like 35 degrees.
mhm.
The water's supposed to be, and you're supposed to get. So it doesn't have to be all at once, but each week you're supposed to get like 11 total minutes a week to start seeing the health benefits of that stuff.
Mhm.
So that's why I do it, and because I'll go to the gym like, well, not now, obviously, but I'll usually do the gym 3 to 5 times a week, and I just do it on the days that I go to the gym because doing it on the days that I don't go to the gym is just like I don't have the confidence built that day to handle
Dude,
that.
just make every day leg day. Come on, like
Exactly.
do it. Just wa- start walking around all funny because your legs are so big. That'd be amazing. You're so strong.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, man. So there is actually some serious health benefits to that.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think there could be also just like
It's just refreshing though too, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like you're in a warm environment, you're doing good work, and all of a sudden it's like you get cooled off. Like it feels nice, wakes you up, it gives you energy, it feels good.
The funny thing about the sauna too is like if you're doing it at 185, at least in my experience, for 20 minutes, you kind of have this mental battle in your head too. Like, I mean, some people distract themselves, but usually I'll just kind of put on like some philosophy, like speaker, usually like Alan Watts or Joe, what's his name, James Ron, um, and
Uh,
I'll listen to
Jordan
philosophy.
Peterson.
I mean, he's not bad either.
Precisely. Yeah.
Precisely, yeah. But when you're in there, your body wants to convince you to get out of there because you're essentially cooking yourself. And yeah, man, it's just you get out of there, and it doesn't matter how hot it is in the locker room. It feels like this like huge like brush of cold air, and all the sweat that's accumulated on your body and didn't have anywhere to go just kind of
Mhm.
evaporates and cools you down. It's like the craziest feeling when you
Yeah,
get
just
out of the sauna.
opens up all your pores, all the
Hmm.
it just it feels good. There's a difference.
Yeah, and then when you get out of the shower, like it sucks for that 3 minutes or the cold plunge, but dude, once you get out, man, holy shit, everything's just, it's warm. Everything's warm, and your body's warming itself up, and I don't know, man. There's just something about it, where it just feels like you had a huge cup of coffee and you're ready to go like kill the day,
Mhm.
you know?
Yeah, sauna is definitely something that I would like to have.
You
You don't have
get
to be expensive. You don't have to be big. Just a little 2 person little closet basically is all it is with a heater in it.
hmm Yeah,
But yeah, I think it's very beneficial.
yeah, man. You could probably build one. I could definitely see that being a thing you do.
Yeah, I'll probably make it out of pallet wood and rusty nails.
Yeah. But going into that, I mean, you were before your hand surgery. You said you were doing some leather working, right?
Yeah, I was doing what I have the tools for it. Um, because of my hand, I haven't really been able to kind of do anything with that. But it's on standby. It's a standby hobby. I think leather is just something that needs to be kind of revisited with people. There's a lot of things that are made out of plastic now. If they're just made out of leather, they're not against using animal products. I don't know. It's sustainable. You can regrow it. You can make it yourself. It's
It's
good.
not polluting the environment.
Yeah, it's not just more plastic being made for no stupid reason. So
Yeah.
much of it everywhere.
Well, that's a really cool way. That's what I really appreciate about like your kind of view on things is like you really take the time to think about like the sustainability of things and kind of the effects it has on the overall area that you're in. Like you're telling me that well, why don't we first get into your farming and kind of like homesteading stuff, but
Yeah,
going
I
into
have some
that.
visual aids. I got some visual aids this time.
Oh,
So
really?
yeah.
Okay. What have you been doing? What have you been going on?
So did I mention it last time? I mentioned my rabbits.
Mhm.
I got so I bred my rabbits, and I had a bunch of little bunnies at 2 litters. Recently, they're 7 weeks old now,
Oh,
and
wow.
I got them posted up on Craigslist. See if anybody would like some good, nice pets. Some nice, good animals for their garden. Um, yeah, that's been a lot of fun. It's been it's been great. Like therapeutic. I got these little bunnies I can just hold in 2 hands, and they're just all they're fluffy. They're just good for
Absolutely.
it. It's good to be around things like that. I think. And so I was getting into the rabbits, and then I was probably looking on Craigslist, just kind of poking around, looking at rabbit stuff. And then I started seeing stuff about quail. And I remember when I first started getting into this hobby or lifestyle, whatever it is. I remember seeing um, a couple articles about quail, and I remember not really caring about it, not really being interested in it because I'm going to get chickens one day. I don't care about quail. I'm going to get actual chickens and have my own eggs, whatever I want to do. But I live within the city limits, and I'm only allowed to have 5 hens and no roosters. So right there, that kind of limits me, roosters are really noisy. I would like to have a rooster so I could hatch my own eggs and just kind of perpetually just kind of keep my own system going. But not being able to have a rooster, that's not possible. Um, I have to buy chickens every year basically from Tractor Supply or some farm somewhere. I wanted something where I can just kind of manage it myself and just not really have to rely on anybody. So I started looking at quail, and it turns out I believe that quail are the chickens of the future. So I
Okay.
didn't know much. I don't know much about these birds. I picked up a 6 pack of quail in I think it was November. I saw them advertised, and it's about 5 hens and one rooster, and that's enough to get you started. I had a little cage for them, and started feeding them and watering them, and then they started laying eggs for me. I started getting one egg a day from those 5 hens, and I was pretty sold on it. I've been growing from there. I've hatched more birds. I got an incubator. I've ordered eggs online. I've hatched those out, and I think I'm just gonna keep growing eggs. And it's been really good so far. It's been interesting.
Huh. That's a that's definitely a different approach. I mean, it's definitely a way to kind of get around the city limits thing. And I guess are quail like quieter than
Yeah,
um okay.
yeah.
That
So
makes
they're
sense.
not they're considered like pets, I guess. I mean, maybe people exploit a loophole in their city ordinances where you can only have 5 chickens, but you can have unlimited quail technically.
Yeah.
But they're not noisy. They're not as noisy. The roosters do crow. They make this
Okay.
really interesting kind of it's almost like an echoing sound.
Huh.
That's the only noise they make. They kind of sound like wild birds. It's kind of hard to pick them out, you know, from the wild birds that are in the trees and stuff.
Well, that
But
kind of
if you
must be nice to kind of wake up to too, though. I don't know. I always enjoy waking up to the sounds of birds. That's one
yeah.
thing about winter that kind of stinks.
So check this out. So you can go out and check on your birds, and then you can grab like a handful of eggs out of their cage.
Huh.
Like that's what I like. It's just there's so much benefit to it. I get these cool little animals,
Yeah.
um,
And breakfast.
and breakfast, for lunch and dinner, But so here's my eggs. I was going to show you my farm eggs,
Yeah.
my quail eggs. So these are quail eggs.
Oh wow. So they are kind of tiny, huh?
They're small. They're 3 to 4 of them equal about a chicken egg.
Okay.
Like 3 of them equal about a medium egg. If you want to go 4, that's closer to like a larger jumbo. But
Okay.
taste just like chicken eggs. They look cool,
Oh
like
wow.
dinosaur eggs.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah,
Huh.
but it's just a lot of fun. I don't know.
Yeah. Do you have to refrigerate those, or I'd imagine not, right?
I mean, they're just like farm fresh chicken eggs. Basically, you can keep them on the countertop for a month if you wanted to, as long as you don't wash them.
Mm-hmm.
As soon as you wash them, you got to refrigerate them, just like store bought eggs.
Oh, well, that makes sense. Yeah, and so you started with the quail, and that's so you're not just keeping them though. You said that you're kind of life cycling them, right? Kind of waiting for them to get to a certain point and then slaughtering.
Yeah, so part of the process, I mean, I guess you would say it's like the harder part of raising animals is like sometimes you have to cull animals. Sometimes animals get sick or they get beat up by the other animals. That's something that was really shocking, was just how mean these quail are to each other, or how mean they can be. Um, they're little dinosaurs. They're vicious. If they decide they want to pick on a certain hen or a certain rooster, like they really go at it. Um,
Wow.
you have to be prepared to handle that, responsibly, ethically, I believe. You don't want animals to suffer. And part of that is, putting them down, if that's what it takes.
Mhm.
That's been interesting. But but the way it breaks down is if I were to hatch 25 eggs, roughly half of them would be hens, half would be roosters. So hens are much more valuable because they lay eggs every day of their life as long as they're around. Roosters are good for a breeding program, or what people typically do is meat.
Mhm.
So roosters are basically just a byproduct of you wanting to get more eggs, more hens, and you just end up with these males that you're gonna have to feed if you want to keep them. They're a little bit louder, they crow. Um, so most people just butcher them. They process them, butcher them, and put them on the kitchen table.
I mean, that's the way it's supposed to be though, and I think that's an interesting byproduct of kind of this quest too.
Hmm.
that I think a lot of people would have a hard time. It's kind of sad too that a lot of people would have a hard time kind of coming to terms with that and being able to decide that. Because, yeah, you love your animals, but at the same time, it's important to cull and control the population that you have, not just so that you can maintain feeding them and taking care of them, but also to maintain kind of like this order and peace in the roost that you have.
Hmm.
Um, and that goes along with like hunting too. Like, yes, you don't want to hunt everything. In terms of you just want a population control, because that goes along with conservation. Um, so it's tough because we love animals and all this, but understanding that is a huge undertaking for a lot of people, especially someone that hasn't been around that before.
Yeah, and this is something that I'm kind of learning on my own. Now. I mean, I grew up fishing and catching fish and cleaning fish. As a kid, it wasn't really a big deal. Just kind of something that seemed natural. If you're a fisherman, you should know how to clean your fish.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I've never raised animals. Like as a kid, I didn't grow up on a farm. I grew up in a trailer park in Southern California. I mean, um, it's been really interesting. It is hard though. That's the thing. You think about it, it's not a hard thing to do. It's like, oh, you need to go out and like dispatch an animal for dinner or whatever. But it's either easy to do or hard to do. I think it's hard to do. Obviously, it's hard to do. Otherwise, more people would be doing it, and we wouldn't be relying on factories and paid people to kind of do it for you in some other state or in certain situations, other countries. There's meat
Mm-hmm.
that we get from China
Yeah.
that people don't realize. There's meat that we get from other places. I mean, that's the hardest part. It's so hard that we outsource the processing of animals because it's hard work. Like it's mentally, it can be a lot. Having to deal with animals like that all the time. It can be taxing mentally. I can see that.
I think it also just shows kind of like an overall understanding of how life works too, though,
Hmm.
because we can't always all be around. I That's something I actually kind of want to ask. Do you think it's kind of brought you a little bit closer to understanding, like life and death, and gave you a little bit more appreciation for life after kind of doing all this and having a coal?
Yeah, I mean, like we all see life and death, like growing up and stuff. But if anything, like actually, like holding this little animal and processing it, dispatching it, letting it pass away, and actually feeling it kind of flutter. You feel the muscle spasm in your hand. And obviously, you see the blood, you see the muscle react and stuff. Just like this is a real thing. This is, if anything, it's a reminder of what life is or what it,
Hmm.
how it end. I guess it's also just yeah, just a reminder. We all know what life and death is, but just here's like a tangible thing that's happening right now, just to kind of ground you a little bit.
Yeah.
It was it was different. Definitely the meat that I ate that I processed, um, it tastes different. It just not just because I've never had quail before, because I never had, but just like it's not like it's like a carton of fries, like a little box of fries. I'm just gonna eat it because I'm hungry. It's like no, this is that bird that I held in my hands. You
There's
know,
like a respect
Process
for
it.
it.
Kind of. I mean, maybe that sounds like wishy washy or whatever, but I definitely appreciate it more because it took a lot of work to get it. Maybe that's what
Exactly.
I'm trying to say. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think there's also just like I can't say that I've culled animals before or processed animals. I'd like to learn how to hunt. That being said, and maybe
Mhm.
have like chickens and stuff in the future. But it's interesting. I think there's like an understanding though that like you're not just gonna toss the food out because you're not hungry. Whereas like there's
Yeah.
so much waste in this country of food and things like that, but when you actually put in the work and the time, whether that be hunting game or um, raising animals to later eat, um, there's a different respect that goes along with your food. Um, Not that you don't have abundance or whatever, but it's just so easy to throw away something that you don't really have a respect for the time and energy that went into it, you know?
Hmm. I mean, you can think of it like ethically, or even just if you want to break it down financially, just like there's a lot of time and there's some money that goes into raising these animals. Why would I want to disrespect them or treat them badly? It just doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah. I think that's also kind of a byproduct of the factory farming system too. Is just
Hmm.
kind of like that because you got to think that like how many people actually experience this? It's like got to be something like one in like
Well,
50.
people become callous too. Like those people that work in those factories, like that's just what they do, and they're kicking animals, down a tube or whatever they do. I mean, there's plenty of footage of animals just not being treated that great.
Yeah. I
And
mean,
it just
factory
people,
farming's
people being
terrible.
callous.
Yeah.
They don't see these animals. They just see them as something I got to do. This isn't a living thing.
Mhm.
This isn't alive. I don't know.
There's not really a respect for it. And I think it also just has a societal impact. I mean, in terms of like our respect for the energy that we're consuming if we want to go like that wishy-washy route, you know.
Mhm.
Um and there's so much waste and everything that like I don't know, it kind of gives me a little bit of appreciation talking to you about it, about like things that we eat and consume, you know.
Well, honestly, what I found out with these quail is, if you're somebody that's kind of you want to stick your toe in a kind of making your own food or farming, or you want daily organic eggs, fresh eggs every day. You get yourself a little, 2 by 2 cage, something you'd put a parakeet in, maybe a little bit bigger, and you could have it in your porch. You can have it in your deck, and you'd have a little handful of birds, 4 or 5 birds in there, and they just lay eggs for you every day.
Absolutely. I,
Yeah, it's super super easy to do, and it could be good for a lot of people.
yeah, absolutely. I think it would be a lot more. It's just crazy how probably easy it would be to sustain the amount of food we need if everyone kind of played their part in it. I know, obviously, for cities and things like that, it's not really feasible. But when we were talking about people that like are in the countryside or even maybe the suburbs, like everyone's got a few chickens, like that's a whole area that we wouldn't be need to waste gas and all this other stuff for.
Mhm.
Um, I don't know. It's very interesting to kind of think about. Um, Before the podcast, though, we did talk about how what if you'd be interested in the future of like possibly raising like cattle or different animals that kind of graze and things like that. And you had a very interesting plan.
Yeah, so there's somebody that I've followed for a few years. His name is Joel Saladin, and he's at Polyface Farms in Virginia. He's in the Shenandoah Valley there in the western part of Virginia, and a big part of what he does is number one for him is just nice, good green grass, good pastures, and moving animals on that pasture daily or weekly. Basically, rotating animals um, off of a certain area so they get onto a fresh area. And he does that by following up chickens behind the cattle. The chickens pick through the manure piles and they get to the grass that the cows didn't get. And it's just this whole kind of process of just using good grass, having it be fertilized by cows and having it spread by chickens, and just kind of going about that way. I'm thinking about down the road. It could be done pretty easily. It could be a good business endeavor, but with electrical fencing, kind of doing the same thing, the same idea. Um, all over the country, especially here, there's a lot of traditional farmland, a lot of traditional pasture. There's a lot of good fields, good grass everywhere that's just not being used like it used to. Um, I think that land could be leased. You can put some electric netting on there, bring in some water tanks on a truck, not a whole lot. And you can grow out sheep, goats, chickens, pigs, depending on what kind of netting that you get. You can grow them out on this leased land that people aren't using anyway and raise animals on it, take them to slaughter or whatever you want to do, and do it again the next year. And it's nothing permanent. Um, it's all mobile. It's all scalable. You can go big, you can go small. Um, that's
That
kind of what I'm thinking about trying out.
that almost sounds like it would be a good business deal for farmers, honestly.
It
In
could
terms
be.
of like instead of saying like the lease land and stuff,
Mhm.
um, they don't use that certain field for like a X amount of time that you need them to graze there, and the cattle and stuff. You guys just come to an agreement where you don't have to pay a lease, and you're pretty much biodiversifying and fertilizing their land, so it's much
Mhm.
better for the environment than growing with like factory made fertilizer, you know?
Mhm.
Because that's actually a guy that's I didn't, there's no there's no secret here. I listened to Joe Rogan, but he had on he
I've
had
learned so
on
much from that show. I've
oh
learned,
I
so much.
know.
Yeah.
I don't know. I might have told you to check this guy out last time, but Sadhguru.
Yeah, you talked about him. Yeah.
Yeah. So
I didn't look him up though. I didn't look him up after you talked
oh,
about it.
that's all right. He talks about how our soil is becoming like so bad because we're using these factory fertilizers
Mhm.
and we're not getting like nutrients from the actual earth. Um, but that seems like a way. Now that I think about it, it seems like a way that that could be helped um, re like fix the soil, you know, and give it more actual life and nutrients in a very sustainable way at the same time as breeding cattle and breeding chickens and everything.
Mhm. Yeah, you just got to remember to add. You need to add things. If you're taking, you need to add back to it. So even if you just have a little 4 foot by 4 foot garden container in your backyard, if you're if you're pulling carrots out of that thing every single year and you're not adding anything to it, you're gonna get to a point to where the soil's not gonna be good. You're not gonna get good product out of it. You have to replenish. You have to put something back in there. Um, Compost and material, grass shavings, even leaves. I mean, that's better than nothing. It's better than just spraying it with chemicals every year.
Absolutely. um. Well, that's wow. We could go real deep on this. I know we only have so much time, but
Yeah.
it kind of also makes me think about like controlled burns and stuff. In the forest, they do controlled burns to it almost prunes trees to a certain way, and there's a lot of pine cones that open up when they actually burn in the forest, and that's how the seed is spread for those types of I think they're pine trees or cedars or something like that. Um, but I wonder if that also helps on like fields and stuff. If you were to control burn a field, then have it regrow some, and then have the cows come through, and then have the chickens come through, if that would lend itself to this like very regrown field after what like three years probably, and like kind of completely renutrients the soil in a very positive way.
Yeah. I mean, this model that I learned from Joel Salden, it can be broken up even further because let's say you have sheep. Sheep and goats are kind of considered pretty similar. And then you've got cattle. So I forget how it gets broken down, but when the grass is newest and when it's the longest, it's the most prime. That's when you want your cows to get to it so that they can get all the best stuff. They leave their manure. And then I think you can have like goats or sheep come in after the cows and they'll take the grass down even further down to like the mid level. And then you can rotate them out. And then you bring in the chickens and they just kind of pick through everything and eat the maggots that are in the poop. They keep down the flies. If you have enough chickens, they're doing that. They're producing eggs so they can be used for meat. And they're dropping their manure as well. Chicken manure is great. Um, it just seems like a good way to go. Even if you're going to do this in your own backyard, it's a good system to have. Keep your animals rotated. You don't want them sitting in the same mud pile, the same dirt pile, day after day, year after year. It's good to get them on new stuff, and you're going to be outside. Let them enjoy, let them roam a little bit. Let them get out there, move them around.
Absolutely, kind of like taking your dog for a walk.
Yeah, and honestly, you can still do it in an enclosed environment, an enclosed kind of cage or run, so that they're protected and they don't get out. They can still move that thing around the yard. You can give them fresh grass all day.
hmm Absolutely. That kind of leads me into a question of with your animals so far. Have you run into any issues with predators?
No. Um, there was this one time I left my quail cage open and a couple of them got out. I went back out there and that's when I noticed I saw one just kind of laying underneath the cage, just kind of hanging out, just not really doing anything. And I was missing two. So I don't know what happened to him. I'm assuming an owl or a hawk got to him. We don't have coyotes or anything like that, so I'm assuming we have owls, we have hawks. That's about it, though. I haven't had any problems really. I mean, even the owl, if it was an owl, the owl didn't bother me at all because he just, I don't even know if it was an owl.
Yeah,
But they're pretty well protected. I did a good job keeping them off the ground and getting them out of the wind and the rain and everything. And it'd be hard for anything to get up into them.
absolutely. Yeah, I know when you have chickens, there can be a lot of issue with that. My uncle has a whole what do you call it? Chicken enclosure.
Got a coop,
Yeah,
chicken coop.
coop. Yeah. Um, he has a whole coop, and it's got an outdoor area that's completely like fenced in and stuff. But there was, I want to say it was a coyote or something that dug. He put it so the fence had about a foot on the ground, so you couldn't dig under it, but something still dug under it.
Mhm.
Um, I think it was a coyote or something like that. And then he had a bear trying to get into the coop. That was a whole nother thing.
Yeah, there's not much you can do with that.
No,
Like,
yeah.
who wants to get in? Yeah.
um, but he ended up losing a good amount of chickens to that coyote. Um, so yeah, there's a lot of interesting things to think about with predators too. It sounds like you're kind of in a good area to kind of not have as much
Yeah.
issue with said things.
Um, Electric fencing could help with that. The type of electric fencing that I'm talking about. With predators and stuff. That's what it's for. Is to keep them in and keep other things out.
That's smart.
Um, but yeah, no real predator problems, which is a good thing. Um, Raccoons can be a problem. I know even possums can be a problem.
Hmm.
I know there's issues where if you have your birds, especially if they're young, if they're on the ground, and if a raccoon or a possum can kind of get their hands, and they'll just start ripping limbs. They'll start ripping
Wow.
wings. Like if they grab the head, they'll rip the head off. Um, Raccoons can be pretty bad. Possums can do that too, I think. Um, I just never would have thought raccoons. I'd have to worry about raccoons. I mean, they got opposable thumbs. I'm terrified of them. You know?
I guess that's true.
Yeah. They got little hands. They can do whatever they want. They can open up trash can lids if they wanted to. It's pretty wild.
Absolutely. Have you so in wake of that, do you have any sort of like, I don't know, a lot of people use for varmints like that, they'll use like air rifles because when you're within city limits and or within certain range of your house, you can only in some states you're only allowed to use like firearms in certain conditions, and you're not really supposed to use it for this close to your house or whatever. So a lot of people use these air rifles um, to deal with varmints like that.
No, I do have a heart traps.
Oh, okay.
Um, so those cages that have a little trap door, so when they go in there and they step on a platform, it closes behind them. Um, I've been clearing a lot of property and just getting rid of bushes, getting rid of trees. That's really helped. When I first moved here, I had a lot of groundhogs like living underneath
Mm.
my shed. They're eating all my kale. They're just biting like I don't know if I talked about this before. They just bite the middle of the plant and just completely kill the plant. Just go around and do that to all my kale plants. Ended up trapping him. Um, got rid of him. Um, I have had raccoons. Mostly what I was worried about is mice and rats. I know rats can be a problem with chickens, especially in coops and things, and that's the one thing that I'm worried about because once you start getting rats, I know that's a huge. They're smart. They can get into all kinds of different places, and they're hard to get rid of once you get an infestation. So
Oh wow. I actually didn't know that was a hurdle. I didn't know they were predatory.
yeah, because they're smaller, so whatever their skull can fit through, they can fit through. So it's like the size of a quarter, depending, I guess. And they'll just kill everything. They'll get into a pen, they'll get into a cage, and they'll just start killing stuff.
Wow. I'm sure they can eat a lot.
Well, I don't even think. I think the same thing with raccoons. Like they might eat a couple of birds, but they just kill everything just because they can. So even if they end up eating them or not, they'll just destroy the entire coop or cage, and then walk out of there, and there'll just be a bunch of little dead bodies everywhere that didn't even get eaten. They just wanted to kill something, you know?
Jesus, that's that just
Savage.
sounds evil.
Dude, even like farm animals. I mean, not that I'm really farming. I got quail, I got rabbits and stuff, but like quail are mean. Quail are they're little dinosaurs. They really are.
That's wild, man. I didn't even know that. That's kind of that's terrifying, honestly.
Yeah.
Um, well, kind of going off the whole evil and murder
Oh,
thing. We're when we were preparing for this podcast, we were talking about um another subject that was quite interesting that you've kind of dove into. I don't know if you want to introduce that.
yeah. Did you get to watch it though? Did you watch the
I have
documentary?
not, and I just want you to tell me all about it
All
and
right, I'll
like
tell
your
you.
interests.
I'll tell you what I can remember. All right.
Okay.
It's been a while since I've seen the documentary, but it was probably 2 or 3 months ago. It was on Netflix. It's called The Murdoch Murders, and it took place. It all started taking place pretty recently, within the last like year, I think, year and a half. I think it was after COVID. It takes place in South Carolina. There's this very affluent family. They're really well known in their community. It's a suburb of Charleston, and I can't remember the civic term for this position in this county, but it's the equivalent to like a what is it? Like the top lawyer, a
Okay.
like a what's it called?
Public defendant.
Well,
No.
yeah, not just, but just like the head attorney of the area, basically.
Oh,
So
okay.
they get to basically decide like what courses, what court cases that we decide to choose, and which ones are we drop, and what's going to go up, what deals are we going to make, that type of stuff. And whatever that position's called, I think it was like city. I'm not even trying to remember. Council. It's not a councilman, but it's a top lawyer.
Yeah.
Whatever. Anyways, so within this family, the grandfather, the father, and the current man who's being accused of murder have all held the same position. They're basically the unofficial. They've been the unofficial mayor of this town forever. Everybody knows them. They're very powerful. They're very influential. This guy Alex Murdoch, his son was involved in a boat accident with him and some of his friends. They're drinking. They're boating. Um, this guy Alex Murdoch, his son was driving the boat. They ended up smashing into a bridge, and they got ejected. Um, they ended up not finding one of the girls. She ended up being found later. She was dead. She drowned. Um, that's a whole thing. That's kind of how it starts. That's how it begins. And then you kind of start to see, because of who this kid's father was and the power that he had, what types of things ended up happening because of that. Certain considerations because of who his father is and who his family is. And you really got to see it all on display. And there's all kinds of other things that ended up happening after this that came about. Really interesting. I don't want to ruin a whole lot, but there's other murder. There's other missing people. There's millions of dollars, missing and accounted for. There's all kinds of really cool stuff. And it all kind of starts with this just really messed up boat crash where
Wow.
somebody lost their life. But it basically exposed this whole family and their dealings in this community with all these people for, I mean, possibly generations. The amount of power and influence they had, the amount of money they had. Um, it's all pretty much come to a halt. So what ends up coming of it? One of the things, the major thing that ends up coming of it, is this son who was involved in this boat crash and his mother are found gunned down on their property. They're murdered, and that's what the court case is about now. Is just the father's on trial, and it's all coming together. It just started 2 weeks ago.
Oh,
And I
wow.
told you I got really excited about it because I've seen this documentary a couple of months ago, and then I saw that the trial was finally kicking off, and I've been all about this trial. Um, I'm not like taking notes. I'm like super nerding out on it, but I'm definitely like paying attention. I'm kind of watching stuff as it comes up. It's been really interesting so far.
That's for one. That sounds super interesting. I'm definitely gonna check it out. There's just been a lot going on. Um, but yeah, so is it kind of something you just stumbled upon? And now you have this cool experience of watching that, and now like you kind of get this different perspective on these things that are on the news and stuff that's going on, like as like right after you've gotten the knowledge of this, and it was kind of something that just popped into your life, and you're just like, wow.
Yeah, well, it just made it way more. It got me way more involved in it. Just having seen the documentary, it was a good documentary. It's very interesting. Um, and then just seeing it happen in real life now, it's like I'm all caught up, and now I get to see the real trial. It's been cool.
Yeah, it's definitely super interesting, and just to think that like that that's in America, and that sort of corruption is real. Like that,
Oh yeah,
it sounds like one of those things that's like, oh, this dude's talking about a conspiracy theory again, you know?
I
But
think with a lot of these people, it's like, do they even know that they're wrong? It just seems like just natural. It's like, well, yeah, I know everybody in town, and everybody hooks me up. Like, why wouldn't I do that? Why wouldn't they hook me up? It's just like
yeah, there's this sense
so.
of,
Going back to ethics again. It's like the amount of power and influence that this family's had.
well,
Uh,
absolute power corrupts absolutely. That's what they
yeah,
say, right?
and that's pretty much what's on display, and it's all coming apart though. It's very sad. It's really messed up.
Yeah, absolutely. It just also begs the question of like, how much, if this happens here, if it happened here, where else is it in our society, you know?
Mhm.
And that just hasn't been exposed. I think more along with like social media, like with all the negatives of social media, and we kind of see this with the Ukraine war. It's like a lot more is getting exposed than we've ever seen before. I mean, let alone things where people slip up and have issues like this, and whole corruption gets exposed to. I mean, if you're watching, I've followed the Ukraine war pretty closely, and you're seeing a different side of that no one could even fathom. The closest thing you had was Hollywood movies, and it sure as shit is not a Hollywood movie when you're seeing the shit that's going on there.
Yeah, I mean, just seeing footage of stuff like that, it's surreal. It's like you see like building getting blown up, but you're getting the perspective of somebody inside the building. It's like, whoa,
Yeah,
that's what that's like. Like
and 99% of people don't experience that in their life, and you're seeing it, and you start to kind of empathize with the human condition in that area, let alone the people that were being oppressed or killed by the Murdochs.
oh
So
yeah,
allegedly,
allegedly,
yeah.
yeah. But the
But
one thing I wanted to talk about too was watching a lot of the highlights and footage of the trial. I don't sit there and watch the whole like court proceedings and everything. I kind of pick the highlights and kind of pick what I want to watch. But was how technology. We know how technology is used. Everybody knows their phones recording them. You agree to it and you accept certain apps, and it's depending on what kind of phone you have, what kind of settings you have set up. You can follow your footsteps. And this court case is interesting because it's highlighting people's steps, right before the murder, right after the murder, using their phones. It's recording whether or not your phone is in, landscape mode or the other mode. When did it rotate? When did somebody try to activate the camera? When did somebody try to push the open button? It's recording everything, and it's all being used and it's all being admitted as evidence into this murder case. Was this person there, and what were their movements? Were they near the dead bodies? At what time were they? It's wild.
wow. And yeah, I mean that just goes to show, man, that like how big of an effect like things like this are having. Whether it be that it's exposing things to society, or people are experiencing these events that would have never experienced that before, let alone what 30 years ago. So it opens a lot more to knowledge and kind of consideration of understanding different perspectives in different situations. Um, yeah, it's just very interesting to think about. but technology is changing us, and we kind of have to figure out how to understand it and adapt with it because it's moving so quickly.
Hmm.
Um, but that being said, going back to kind of like murder and mystery and things like that, I think we said we were going to hop into a little bit about other um, areas that you've kind of dove into since you've seen the Murdoch murders and things like that.
Yep. So I've been following the. I don't have any. I'm not really prepared.
That's
I
okay.
can't remember the guy's name, but he's an Idaho murderer. I can't remember his name. He's got like a German last name.
Hmm.
You've probably heard about it, but he's accused of murdering those four college students in their apartment, and he's working on his degree. I think he was getting a degree in criminal justice. I think he was working on his master's, or maybe it was a doctor. I can't remember what it was. But he was a university student, and they're saying that he committed these murders. He Somebody went up into this apartment and went into the rooms of these people and murdered them in their rooms and walked out. One roommate who wasn't murdered said she opened her door, saw a person who was dressed all in black, mask and everything, walking past her door and walk out of the house. She then closed her door and went back in her room or back in bed and didn't tell anybody for 8 hours. So she didn't leave the room for 8 hours or told anybody what she had seen for 8 hours. So those people that were murdered were in the rooms for 8 hours because she was just in there for some reason, freaked out or panicked. Um, there's all kinds of evidence on his phone that they have showing that he's driving up and down that street. He's done it for a very long time. They got his route, everything. That trial's going on right now. It's very likely that he's the one that did it, and a lot of it's going to be based off of just, you know, electronic evidence, and also the fact that he left evidence on the crime scene. He left like a knife sheath.
Oh,
Um, he was seen like cleaning stuff up with like latex gloves in front of his house. Just he made a lot of stupid mistakes. If he is somebody who was studying murder and how to murder somebody, he's somebody who wanted to practice it. He did it in the worst way possible. He really fouled it up. But that's been fascinating, almost just to see like how somebody can mess up so badly. You know, this horrible thing that they did. You know, it just I don't know.
I mean, that's kind of what law enforcement relies on is we're all human, right? Even if you're a
Yeah.
psychopath killer. I mean, we're bound to make mistakes. And so that's kind of what they rely on to kind of get ahead and kind of figure these things out. Whether that
Mhm.
always goes according to plan and or leads them to the right direction is yet to be seen, but
Mhm.
it's definitely super interesting.
Yeah, I recommend checking it out. It's
I
I
don't.
mean, part of it is, I mean, these college kids who are murdered. I mean, they're my daughter's age. You know, they're close to my son's age. It's just it's a nightmare. You know,
That's terrible. It it kind of reminds me of Gainesville. Do you remember the Gainesville murders?
I don't know.
Um, I don't remember too much about it. There's a 60 minutes on it, I think. But there was this guy that was going around. It was right at the start of the year for Gainesville. Was it Florida Gators? But pretty much what had happened was this guy was breaking into people's apartments, only college students, and murdering people. And I think he did it to like 3 or 6 people at different occasions, and then he robbed a bank and all these other things, and they ended up finding him like way later. But it
Mhm.
was this whole like the entire campus was terrified for weeks and weeks and weeks, and people were leaving school, and yeah, it was. I think it's more just like the attack on college students that reminds me of it. But there's a whole documentary on it. I want to say it's 60
Well,
minutes, but
there's like historical murders that have gone unsolved, like in our history, where you have these communities that live near train tracks. You know, 100 years ago, and you know there's six people that live in a small house next to train tracks, and then they're all murdered the next day. Somebody just shows up, murders a house full of people and just hops on the train. I mean, these types of things have happened. They just it's crazy.
It's
Like,
terrible.
people could just get away with it. Like nobody knows who did something like that. It's
Hmm.
got 100 years unsolved.
Well, you got to think about the amount of technology they had to try and solve those cases back then
Yeah,
too.
yeah.
And as
Did you
time
see?
as time progresses, you kind of see that like some of it gets better. A lot of people are still wrongfully imprisoned for things they didn't do.
Oh yeah,
But
terrible, terrible.
yeah, but it's just very interesting to kind of see that comparison of where we're at now in comparison to where we were back then.
Yeah.
It kind of takes away a lot of the mystery too, if you really do think about it. Though it's almost less creepy, just because you almost have the safe haven of technology to kind of figure
Kind
things out.
yeah. I mean, you're talking about like technology and all the information we have, and I've tried to talk to my wife about this, about my thoughts on technology. It's uh, it's great having access to all this information, right? We're constantly just getting stuff like thrown at us through our phones, through our computers. All this information everywhere, all these articles, everybody's writing something, everyone has something to say, but there's no way to filter through all the crap.
Exactly.
Just because you have access to all the information in the world doesn't mean that it's any good if you can't filter through it and know what the hell you're looking for. So part of me is a little
Exactly.
bit, part of me is a little bit disappointed. Thinking back as a kid and what the future is going to be like is, just if anything, just making things more confusing and making things more convoluted and harder to understand and harder to learn because there's just so much crap out there.
Absolutely. I mean, you can even look at it in the so there's this new AI that's called ChatGPT. Have you heard of it?
I've been seeing some of the stuff, some of those pictures that have been
Yeah.
coming out. And I've
Yeah.
seen some recipes for like chicken that are kind of
Mhm.
interesting.
And you got to think like they made it so it can answer these very complex questions, but it can't really answer it hasn't figured out how to answer very simple questions. But that leads me to the idea because it's getting all its like samples from like the internet that like we don't know if the information it might sound all righteous and good and everything, but who's checking its sources? Like we don't know what's factual in this thing when it's coming with information from the internet where we don't know if it's 50-50 on if that shit's true or not.
I don't know if it's the same AI technology that you're talking about because I think there's a couple of them now. Well, a few probably
Mm-hmm.
people have been talking about, but this one that I saw today, it had this AI come up with a recipe for like like chicken breast or something like that, or one of like a tomato chicken breast recipe. So I went through and gave the whole recipe. Everything sounds good, but it didn't have anything for tomatoes. Like there's no ingredient that involved tomatoes or tomato sauce or anything like that. So I guess a person went and asked the AI, "Hey, ask for a chicken with tomato recipe. You didn't include any tomatoes." I forget what the excuse was. If something like, "Oh, sorry, I forgot," or whatever. It's chicken and vegetables and a cream sauce instead. It's like, "Oh, okay, I'll just take this then." What do you need? Like, don't mind me wanting a tomato recipe. Just give me something that you think I should have.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting too. It's just like, oh, it's gonna make the decision for me now.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it was a glitch or a weaker
No.
programmer. I thought it was kind of interesting. It's like, yeah,
Oh, it
why didn't
is. Yeah, it is, and it's because that's what I mean about the simple questions.
Mhm.
So it probably just went somewhere and found a chicken recipe with a sauce and forgot the like tomato part or something. Like I don't know how it works, but I don't know. Technology's in a very odd spot if you really think about it now.
Yeah, it's
Um,
gonna get weird. It's gonna get real weird.
next few years, next 10
What do you think?
years.
What do you think about those pictures that are getting generated? Like I've seen the pictures where they ask AI to come up with a like a party,
Yeah,
like a permanent party type thing.
and it's come up with some astounding pictures too, like very well done ones.
Here's the thing that I'm not too impressed with AI. Obviously, it's impressive, but
Hmm.
when it comes to the hands, the hands are all distorted, and all
Oh
those
yeah,
pictures they're like segmented or not attached, and maybe they got 6 fingers. So like that's one of the hardest things, from my understanding, for like a cartoonist or like an artist to draw is like human hands. Like just very difficult. So it makes sense that maybe an AI would kind of skip over that or maybe not be as good at kind of coming up with an image of human hands.
Yeah,
Does that make sense?
no, 100%. And that's very interesting too, is just like you think about the key features of someone, you don't really think of the hands.
Oh, cool.
There it is. Yep.
I'm
So it was
back.
probably just a little connection issue. So we had a technical difficulty there. Perfectly fine.
Hey, stay
Um,
calm.
yeah. So what I was saying was, so we think about the important aspects that we teach each other are important about a person. We think about the face, the shape of the body, but we don't really talk much about hands, and no one really focuses on hands and how complex they really are. It goes along with your surgery,
Yeah.
how they move so differently, and how it's kind of hard. Like if I were to look at your hands and come back a month later, I would have no idea what your hands would look like. But
Yeah.
we think about each other's faces, we can remember each other's faces. So maybe there's this kind of complex understanding of hands that we don't really get as people. And with this thing that's trying to understand something or become sentient, I guess, it has
Like
a
the
trouble.
articulation, like the different segments in the hand and just getting that just right. I mean, there's like Renaissance, artists that had a lot of time to kind of get that down.
Exactly. And it's
Oh,
one of the
easy.
harder things to draw.
Yeah. What about the
Getting.
teeth though? Remember the teeth? Remember the smiles where they had
Mm-hmm.
like I saw one where there's like an extra row of teeth. It was like three rows of teeth. It was pretty gnarly.
That's interesting and very unsettling, actually.
Yeah. Well, you think about it, it's like every picture on the internet when it's a party, it's like, oh, you've got some pretty girl like smiling, with a big smile. And you can see a good majority of her teeth. So the AI kind of does the same thing, but like accentuates it and almost makes it like a Joker smile, or she has
Yeah. And
like a hinge instead of a jaw or something. Where it's, I don't know, clear teeth in her mouth. That's crazy. It looks creepy.
yeah, and they don't know like the origin spot of teeth too.
Yeah.
Um, so you'll have them kind of like very off center and like to the side. Well,
Yep.
not like your teeth start in like a specific order usually, and it'll have like one center middle tooth instead of them being like two teeth in the front.
Oh, yes,
And
I saw that one too. Yeah.
yeah, and that's very unsettling too. It's a it kind of goes. There's a good comparison going between animation and the AI, because animation there's a lot of things that lead to the uncanny valley. I don't know if you've heard of that.
Yep.
Um, that go to the uncanny valley, and it's like there's a lot of hurdles that uh, AI is going to have to understand before they can produce pictures of at least humans to the right correctness to um, make them believable.
Yeah, I just don't understand. It's like we got this AI. We got so much hope for it, but we're just having it make creepy pictures right now. Like I don't know. It just seems like a gimmick. I don't know.
No, I can understand that, and I think that
Part of me thinks that. The other part of me is like, oh, this is gonna blow up and become incredible pretty soon. Like I don't know what it's gonna be.
I mean, you could have said the same thing about 3D movies,
Yeah.
and they had 3D
Yeah.
TVs and all this other things. It could go either way. I'm not
Small
gonna.
vision.
Yeah, that was actually a thing for a little while. I forgot about
Yeah.
that. But but yeah, man. A lot of interesting topics today. But we're at about an hour 20. So thanks for coming on, man. I don't know. Is there
Yeah.
anything you wanted to cover before we get out of here?
No, just yeah. Thanks for having me on. Good catching up with you, and I'll try to come up with some weird stuff to talk about next time if you have me on
Oh,
again.
it's not an if, it's a when. We'll have you on again soon enough.
I
But
think
yeah.
we need to talk about some
Oh
ancient
yeah.
apocalypse stuff, maybe, right?
Yeah, I'm gonna have to finish up that series, and that'll definitely be something we have to talk about. And the stairs in the woods.
Oh, that's right. Murdoch Murders. Watch the documentary. Give it 10 minutes. Just start it, or maybe just watch the trailer and see if it'll hook you. But I think you'll like it, man.
Absolutely, I will. I will. I'll let you know as soon as I do too.
Cool.
But yeah, man, it's been a pleasure, and thanks everyone for watching. I will catch up with you guys again soon, and you guys have an awesome day.
See you, J-Mo.
See you, man. Oh, hold on 1 second.